How do you raise a child with your last breath, only for him to spit on your grave? In Umokwe village, there lived a woman named Obianoju, but the village knew her as Mama Obi. She was a widow, not by choice but by fate. Her husband died when their only child, Obidik, was just 4 years old. He was crushed at a building site while trying to make enough money to send their son to school. From that moment, Mama Obi's life turned into a long, painful journey, not because she didn't love her child, but because she loved him too much. She sold firewood, fetched water for rich women. She washed clothes for people who sometimes didn't pay. She walked from one end of the village to the other, carrying basins on her head and pain in her chest, all to raise her son the best way she could. He was all she had, her beginning and end, her reason to keep going even when there was nothing left in the pot to boil. There were nights where she would soak garri, drink the water and lie to her son that she had already eaten. She gave up marriage, she gave up sleep, she gave up everything, but still it was never enough. When Obidik turned 10, he began to notice things. He noticed that his friend Chuka wore neat uniforms with shining black shoes. He noticed that Ebuka brought fried rice and chicken to school, while he came with white rice wrapped in nylon and palm oil. His notebooks were always the last to be replaced. His uniforms were always patched, and his shoes looked like they were born during the Civil War. One afternoon, Obidik came home angry. He dropped his bag on the floor and shouted, "Why did you give birth to me if you know you wouldn't take care of me?" Mama Obi looked up from where she was peeling cassava. Her hand paused. "What happened, my son? Why are you asking me? Chuka is going to Model Academy in town, even Ebuka. But me, I am in that useless community grammar school where they beat us like goats. Is that a school?" She tried to explain calmly. "Model Academy costs 25,000 naira every term. I don't even make that in 3 months. Then why did you bring me into this world? Why didn't you let me die with Papa?" Those words stabbed her deeper than any sickness could, but she said nothing. She just wiped her hand on her wrapper and walked into the kitchen quietly. That night, she cooked white yam with red oil. She placed the food before him, but he pushed the plate away with his leg. "No meat again? Are you feeding me or punishing me?" From that day, Obidik began to see her as his enemy. By the time he turned 15, he had joined a group of boys in the village who smoked and chased girls around. She begged him, cried, even knelt down in public one afternoon after he came back drunk, and that was the day he slapped her. She had held his shirt and pleaded, "My son, don't destroy your life." He shouted, "Leave me alone," and slapped her so hard that her earring fell on the ground. Neighbors screamed. One old woman ran to stop him, but Mama Obi said nothing. She picked up her earring, turned away and entered her room. That evening, she didn't eat. She sat on the floor holding a piece of his baby wrapper and staring into the wall like she was searching for answers that didn't exist. He grew older and worse. He would come home and insult her. Sometimes, he wouldn't even come home for 2 days. Still, she cooked for him. Still, she washed his clothes. Still, she kept a lantern on by the window, hoping that one day he would return smiling. But that smile never came. By the time he turned 21, he left the village without telling her, packed up his nylon bag, took her last 2,000 naira hidden in the cupboard and disappeared. She looked for him for years. She asked neighbors, travelers, church members. No one knew where he had gone. She waited for a letter, but none came. She waited for a call, but it was all silent. Then her health began to fail. She started coughing blood. The village chemist told her to go to the general hospital in town, but she didn't have the money. She tried sending word to Obidik through a neighbor's son who was going to the city. "Please tell him I'm sick," she said. "Even 5,000 naira will help me buy drugs." But Obidik received those letters and calls, but ignored it and never sent anything. Wicked woman. you want to reap where you did not sow. That was what he said after receiving the letters. One day, she fainted on the road while returning from the market. A schoolgirl helped carry her home. She lay on her mat for 3 days, drinking only water and salt and eating nothing. Her body was tired, her hope faded. She sat outside many nights, staring at the moon and whispering a prayer to God. Please don't let this boy forget me. Touch him to remember me. She shed tears while saying it. One hot afternoon, after 3 years, a loud car horn was sounded outside her small house. She thought maybe it was for someone else, but the car stopped right in front of her gate. She looked up from the window and gasped. A black jeep, clean, shining and big. A man stepped out, tall, dark, well-dressed, wearing a gold wristwatch and black sunglasses. Mama, the voice called. Her heart jumped. Obidik, she said in a whisper. Yes, Mama, it's me. Your son is back. She dropped the frying spoon and shouted, Jesus, my son, my only child. She ran to him and hugged him with tears pouring down her face. The wrapper on her chest nearly came loose, but she didn't care. You came back. I thought you forgot me. He laughed, showing white teeth. Forget you? Never. I had just wanted to make money first. He opened the boot of the car and brought out bags of rice, cartons of noodles, wine, clothes, shoes, 100,000 naira in cash. She collapsed on her knees. God, you finally answered me. People gathered. Some clapped. Some shook their heads. Mama Obi, you are now the mother of a big man, no? That evening, he cooked her a meal. He said, Mama, eat. Let me serve you for once. You have suffered enough. She looked at the pounded yam and white soup and started crying. I never believed I would see this day, she said. My son cooking for me. He sat beside her and fed her with love and laughter. She ate slowly. She chewed every swallow like it was gold. That night, she didn't sleep. She stayed awake, smiling, touching the shoes and wrapper he brought, thanking God in her heart. Meanwhile, Obidik didn't sleep over. He lodged in a hotel near their village. But by morning, the house was quiet. Too quiet. She didn't wake up to sweep the compound as usual. She didn't light the stove and she didn't say good morning. A neighbor entered to greet her and found her lying on the floor near the kitchen, white foam in her mouth, eyes rolled up, her hands stretched as if she had been reaching for something. She had died during the night. The neighbors shouted. People came gathering. Some cried, Chai, why would this woman die the very day her breakthrough came? Others murmured, he used her. I swear he used her for ritual. But when they told Obidik, he wasn't even shocked and he didn't even shed a tear. 2 days before his arrival, Obidik had driven to a lonely village past Nsoka. He walked into the shrine of a man called Dibia Ndu. You want true wealth? The old man asked, peering through cowries. Obidik nodded. Then you must serve a sacrifice of blood, not by knife, but by timing. Cook for her. Let her eat with joy, but don't sleep in the same house. Leave while she is still smiling. Is that all? Yes, but the dead will never forget. Obidik left with a bottle of oil and a secret. A week later was the burial ceremony. He wore dark glasses to the funeral. He hired a DJ, slaughtered a cow, brought crates of drink and told the village, let's give her a big send-off. People ate, drank and danced, but they didn't know the truth. He wasn't mourning. He was celebrating, not the life of his mother, but the prize she had become. The funeral was the biggest Umokwe village had ever seen in over 20 years. There was no space in the compound. Chairs were everywhere. Music was loud. Smoke from roasted meat covered the air like fog. The cow Obidik brought was the fattest cow in the village. Children danced in front of the speakers. Women tied their wrappers high and moved from pot to pot like it was Christmas. Nobody could believe that Mama B, the same woman who used to fetch firewood barefoot, now had a funeral that looked like a chief's burial. He has done well, the villagers whispered to themselves. Obidik really honored his mother. They clapped when he stepped forward to give his speech. My mother suffered, he said, wearing dark glasses. But I thank God I came back to make her proud before she died. People clapped again, some even cried. But there was one old woman in the back who said nothing. She just looked at Obidik for a long time, then she stood up and walked away. That night, after everyone had gone and the last cup of palm wine had been swallowed, silence returned to the compound. The lights were off, the pots were empty, the car was bones. Obidik stood by the window, holding a bottle of foreign whiskey in his hand. His shirt was open, his eyes were steady. The full moon poured silver light over the backyard. He waited until the entire village was asleep, then he picked up a flashlight and walked quietly out of the house. He didn't go to the room where his mother used to sleep. He didn't look at the sandal she had left by the kitchen. He didn't even kneel to say a prayer. He walked straight to the grave, her grave. It was fresh, covered with red sand and flowers. He stood there for a moment, looking down at the spot where the woman who gave him life now lay, cold and forgotten. Then he chuckled. So this is how your story ends, he said. Old woman, mother of struggle. After everything, it still ended in one room. He kicked the edge of the grave and spat, a long dry spit that hit the sand and disappeared. You called yourself a mother, but you were nothing but a block on my road. You had one job, to help me succeed, but you couldn't even afford the school bag. I begged you for a chance. You gave me Bible verses. I begged you for connections, and you gave me cassava and fasting. Now look where your blood has brought me. He paced around the grave slowly, breathing heavily. I told them you were not useful, but you see now, you have finally become useful to me. Very useful. He raised the bottle in the air. I thank you, Mama. Thank you for dying on time. Thank you for eating that food with joy. Thank you for making my rise possible. You were the key after all, a key of blood. May your soul rot where it lies. He spat again. This time, he wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and smiled. Then he turned to go. But as he took 3 steps away from the grave, a cold wind brushed his face. He paused, looked behind him. There was nothing, just flowers and soil. He hissed and walked back into the house. The next morning, the wind in the village was stronger than usual. Some people said it was the change of season. Others said, something is shifting in the spirits. That same night, Obidik had a dream. He was standing in front of his house, holding a sack of money. He was laughing and throwing the notes into the air while people clapped. Then the sky turned black. He wanted to run, but his legs refused to move. Suddenly, his mother appeared from behind her grave. Her clothes were wet with mud, her eyes were wide and red, and her lips were bleeding. She walked towards him slowly. You spat on me, she said. You spat on the only face that ever looked at you with love. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. You took my last breath and turned it into profit. You turned my hunger into your help. You buried me, but forgot that the ground here stings. She reached out and touched his forehead with one finger. Her touch burned. You will rise, yes. You will have all the wealth. People will clap, but it will only last a moment. You will crawl through your wealth and still hunger. Your children will bloom like flowers, but they will all wither before the sun reaches noon. Your bloodline will die miserably with curses in their mouths. Obidik fell to his knees in the dream. Mama, please. But she disappeared. He woke up sweating, heart racing. He sat up and looked around. The room was quiet. The fan was still turning. He told himself, it's just a dream. He poured himself a drink, took a deep breath and went back to bed. Over the next few months, Obidik's life took a sharp turn. Money began to pour in from nowhere. He got a call from a company he had been disturbing for years. They offered him a contract worth 85 million naira. Another man he once helped casually introduced him to a politician who gave him land. A real estate agent called from Abuja and said, "I have a buyer ready for that property." In 1 year, Obidik became a millionaire. He bought 2 cars, moved to Enugu, started living like a king. The same village that once mocked him now whispered his name with respect. Women started calling him chief. Youth said, "Na that man wey do burial like senator." He didn't visit his mother's grave again. Not once. He didn't even look back. Obidike's name rose like fresh smoke after rain. The same villagers who once pitied Mama Obe now held her son like a king who returned from war. He had money, not the type that came and went like dry season streams. His compound was rebuilt with imported bricks. 2 cars sat proudly in his driveway. He wore clothes with golden threads and carried phones the size of his old dreams. He opened a company in the city, Obidik and Sons Ventures. Even though his sons were barely toddlers, he named it so because he believed the future belonged to his seed. He married Amarachi, a beautiful woman from Anambra. Her smile could melt the heart of any man, and her curves turned heads in 3 states. But what truly pleased Obidik was how she submitted to his wealth. She didn't ask questions. She didn't dig too deep. When he said, "This car is yours," she only asked, "When can I start driving it?" Their wedding was like a movie. Even senators attended. A popular gospel singer came to perform. People said, "Obidik is now bigger than our local government chairman." And it was true, at least on the outside. Within some years of marriage, they had 4 children, 3 boys and a girl. Obidik named his first son Prince. He called the girl Queen. It was his way of rewriting his own history. He gave them everything he never had: private school, uniforms from abroad, pocket money that even some civil servants couldn't afford. But even in the height of his joy, his nights were not free. He began to hear strange sounds. At first, it was soft weeping. He would wake up and ask Amarachi, "Are you crying?" She would say, "No, baby, I'm sleeping." Then it became footsteps, soft dragging feet that moved from one corner to corner of the room. Once, he got up with a torch and searched the house. Nothing. He told himself it was just stress. But one night, something different happened. He saw his mother. She stood at the edge of the bed, her hands folded, her wrapper tied tightly like the day she last cooked for him. She looked straight into his eyes and said nothing. Obidik froze. He couldn't speak. Then she turned away and began to walk, but not through the door, through the wall. He jumped up, drenched in sweat. The next morning, he went to his pastor. The man prayed, poured oil and declared fire, but it didn't stop. He even consulted with native doctors, and incantations and sacrifices were made, yet nothing changed. He started dreaming of graves, open ones. Some nights, his children would appear inside those graves crying. He began to pray silently. He didn't tell his wife. He couldn't. She was now enjoying the world. Hair appointments, trips to Dubai, spa treatment. What did she know about the smell of a dying spirit? Then came the revelation. It wasn't a prophet that told him. It was a dream, a heavy one. He saw his mother again. This time, she was holding a Bible. She didn't shout or cry. She said to him, "Your bloodline will not cross the line. 25 is the boundary. I won't let what I suffered live long to forget me." He woke up with a wet bed again. He started observing his children more closely. Prince had just turned 16. Chisom was 13 and Queen was 10. The last boy, Ikechukwu, was 5. One night, he called Amarachi and said, "Let's take the children abroad, just for safety." "Safety from what?" she asked. He said, "Never mind, just do it." But deep down, he knew that airplanes don't fly away from curses. Still, life went on. His company expanded. A new branch was opened in Port Harcourt. He was featured in a business magazine and interviewed on live radio. They called him the Miracle Man. But at night, his ears rang. Sometimes his children would cough in their sleep and he would run from room to room like a madman. "Are you okay? Are you alright? Let daddy check you." They would blink in confusion. "Daddy, I'm fine." He was slowly becoming a prisoner in his palace. He stopped traveling. He stopped attending events. He started sleeping in the children's room one by one. He brought charms from the east, buried things in the compound. He paid prophets secretly. But the dreams never stopped. He would always hear one line, 25 is the boundary. Sometimes he would cry in the toilet, not for guilt but for fear. The kind of fear that money could not wash off. And through it all, Amachi began to notice the change. "You don't touch me anymore," she said one night. "I'm just tired, Amarachi," he replied. "You're always tired. Your eyes look haunted." But he said nothing, because what could he say? That her husband had murdered his own mother for money? That his children had expiration dates? That every night he was counting down how many birthdays were left before death came for their children? He began to hate birthdays. The cake, the candles, the laughter. To him it sounded like a countdown. He kept a diary like it was a death calendar. Prince, 16, 9 years left. Chisom, 13, 12 years. Queen, 10, maybe still safe. Ikechukwu, 5, too far. Every birthday he clapped with trembling hands. He forced a smile, but inside he was rotten. He began to drink again. He would sit on the balcony and mumble to himself. "Maybe I can buy time. Maybe if I sacrifice something else." But no answer came. The gods had already taken the prize and the countdown had begun. Obidike's house grew quieter with every passing day, not because it lacked life, but because fear had built a throne in the center of the house. Though he smiled on the outside, each new sunrise felt like a threat. His diary became his best friend. He scribbled in it like a madman, keeping track of borrowed time. Every child's birthday became a reminder, not a celebration. He counted the years like a prisoner scratching marks on his cell wall. Then came the first. Prince, his pride, his first fruits, the heir to everything. Prince had just turned 18 and started acting like the man of the house, sharp, confident, and deeply loved by the community. He was in his second year at a private university, studying international relations. The family had thrown a big birthday for him. Photos were posted online. The captions read, "From legacy to dynasty." A week later, Prince complained of headache. Amachi said maybe it was stress, maybe it was cold, maybe malaria. She gave him tablets. 2 nights later, he died in his sleep. No noise, no struggle. They found him. His eyes were open, his lips parted as if he wanted to say something but he couldn't. The house turned into ashes in spirit. Amachi screamed like a woman who had just lost her womb. But Obidike, he didn't scream. He sat and stared and mumbled, one down. He knew. He went to the grave alone that night and sat beside it. "I'm sorry, Mama, but please, let the others live. Please." He whispered into the night. But the breeze blew cold and the moon refused to shine. The second death came 6 months later. It was Chisom, bright, restless, and always talking. He was running during sports at school when he suddenly collapsed. The autopsy said undiagnosed heart condition. Obidike buried him with no ceremony, no guests, and no photos. He stopped updating the diary. What was the point? The once lively home turned into a hospital of silence. Laughter vanished. Amachi began sleeping in a different room. "She's grieving," he said to himself, but he knew that she was scared of him. One night, he heard her whispering on the phone. "I don't know what's happening. I think something is wrong with him. I can't sleep beside a man whose sons keep dying. I think I married the devil." He walked away from the door quietly after hearing that conversation. Queen, their only daughter, became withdrawn. She stopped talking. She sat for hours, staring at nothing, and then she began to draw pictures of graves over and over again. Ikechukwu, the last boy, only asked one question. "Daddy, are we next?" Obidike slapped him so hard, the boy bled from the nose. "Never say that again," he roared. The house help packed her bag the next morning and left without notice. "Something is wrong with this house," she whispered to the gate man. Then Amarachi left. She packed 2 boxes while Obidik was out for a business meeting, left a note on the bed. "I loved you, but I don't want to die. I'm taking Queen and Ikechukwu away. Don't look for us." He read the note with trembling fingers. He didn't cry. He laughed, then laughed again, then silence. Then the fire started. His company headquarters caught fire on a Monday morning. Nobody could explain how it started. The CCTV footage went blank 10 minutes before the fire. All the documents and records gone. Then the press got involved. One news outlet claimed that sources alleged Obidike's wealth were tied to strange debts. Rumors spread like virus. His business partners pulled out. Clients vanished. Accounts were frozen. His name was trending, not for success but for shame. Obidike became a prisoner in his mansion. Calls stopped coming. Bills kept piling. The staff stopped reporting for duty. 2 weeks later, his only daughter Queen died. Amarachi didn't tell him. He found out from a Facebook post. A photo of Queen with a caption, "Heaven gained another angel. Rest well, baby girl." He called Amarachi. Her number had been changed. He went online and booked a taxi to their last known address. The place was empty. Amarachi had moved with only one child left, Ikechukwu. Obidike returned home that night, alone, wet from the rain and shivering. That night his mother came again in a dream. This time her back was turned. She didn't speak. He crawled to her in the dream, grabbed her wrapper. "Mama, please, I've lost everything. I used you for ritual because of my grief. I was blinded, Mama, please forgive me." She turned slowly. Her face was younger now, but her eyes were full of pain. "You haven't lost everything yet. You still have breath." He woke up with his chest heavy and his heart pounding. And in the corner of the room, he saw it, the diary still open. The last page now had one new line he didn't write. One more to go. Obidike screamed. For the first time in years, he screamed like a man whose soul had caught fire. He ran out of the house only in his boxers. Neighbors saw him collapse at the gate screaming, "Mama, forgive me." But the wind gave no reply, only silence, the kind that listens when justice is being served. The mansion was no longer a mansion, it was now a shrine of loss. Every room whispered a memory, every chair echoed with silence, the curtains were dusty, the floors untied in places, rats scurried in corners. The air smelled of old money and newer sorrows. Obidike stopped bathing, stopped eating. Sometimes, he just sat by the window all day, holding the torn diary like it was the last baby he had. Every knock on the gate made him jump. Every time his phone rang, he thought, is Ikechukwu next? He was walking in the skeleton of fear. Then it happened. He got a call from an unknown number. It was Amarachi. Her voice was dry and flat. "He's sick," she said. "Ikechukwu, he's not talking, he's just staring." Obidike couldn't breathe. He clutched the edge of the chair. "Bring him home, please." But Amarachi hung up. 3 days later, she called again. "He's gone." Obidike said nothing. His hand dropped the phone. His mouth was open, but no sound came. He fell to the ground. His whole body shook like a leaf caught in thunder. Then he screamed, a scream so raw that neighbors came running. But when they entered, they found him on the floor, stiff, his eyes wide open, foaming slightly at the mouth. He was alive but paralyzed, from the neck down. The doctors and the therapists tried, even churches, but the cause had settled in like a king on his throne. He was now fully at the mercy of others. Amarachi refused to return. The community that once praised him now avoided him. His once glorious house stank of urine. He pulled on himself. The nurse who stayed with him quit after 2 months. Only the old gate man remained. "Oga no well again," the man told anyone who asked, "but I pity him. He gets waiting past money." Obidike lay in that bed, day after day, staring at the ceiling. Sometimes he spoke to his dead children, sometimes he spoke to his mother. One night, he whispered, "Mama, you told me. I was blind. I didn't know." Then he remembered that Bible verse she used to say when he was young and hungry. "What shall it profit a man if he gains the world and loses his soul? Vanity, all is vanity." He cried and he wept, and then he begged, "Please take me. Let me die too. What is life now?" But death didn't come. Until one day, he begged the old gate man, "Take me to the village. Take me to my mother's grave." The gate man called two young boys. They carried his stiff body into a rickety bus and drove him to Umuokwe. It had been years. The villagers gathered around. Some pitied, while some spat in anger. So this is the mighty lion, now crawling like worm. They took him to the graveyard, the same grave he once spat on, but now he was laid before it, his face older, worn out and broken. Rain began to fall, not thunderous but gentle, like heaven was shedding tears. He looked at the grave and cried, "Mama, I'm sorry. I see it now. I see your pain. I mocked your love and I turned my back on the one who fed me. I even used you for ritual. Please forgive me. Please take back your curse. Let me rest." People shouted with their mouths open, "Evil man! So you killed your mother for money? Abomination! No wonder he was dishing money like billionaires." Some even called him a monster. A cold wind swept through. Thunder cracked in the distance, and then there was silence. The gate man called out, "Oga! Oga!" But Obidike's eyes were closed, his mouth slightly parted. He was gone, dead, at the same grave he once spat on. They buried him beside his mother. No ceremony, just the wind. And that was how Obidike's lineage closed down. The moral lesson of this story reminds us to never betray the hands that raised us, especially the one that suffered in silence just to see you rise. When you dishonor the parent who suffered for you, life finds a way to repay you with pain. A mother's love is not something to betray, because once broken, it can turn into a curse. Money made by hurting the ones who truly loved you will never bring you peace. What you do to your parents can come back to you, or worse, to your children. The earth never forgets the tears of a mother, and heaven does not ignore the cry of a broken heart. No matter how far you run, you can never escape the consequences of using love for profit.